القيادة السياسية في مصر والرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي من أول يوم وهو يعتبر ويقول الإنسان المصري هو الكنز الأكبر في مصر، ومن هنا جاء الاهتمام بالتعليم وبالبناء حياة كريمة للمواطن والاهتمام بالمواطن تعليميا وصحيا وثقافيا. في مجال التعليم الأفكار دي بدأت من سنة 2014 تقريبا، أو الرؤية ازاي الاجيال الجديده المصريه تكون معده عشان تاخد مسؤوليه اداره مصر في زمن التنافسيه العالميه فيه مختلفه واحتياجات مصر التنمويه مختلفه. بناء الجيل ده هو كان هدف الرؤيه دي. طبعا تنفيذ الكلام ده مش سهل، لان احنا عندنا النهارده نظام تعليمي جواه قبل جامعي، جواه 24 مليون من ولادنا، فده رقم هائل. يعني يمكن الشعب المصري كله له اولاد في النظام التعليمي. احنا خدنا قرار جريء سنه 2016 باعاده بناء نظام التعليم المصري عشان يتوافق مع الاحلام. فعشان كده عملنا فكره نظام التعليم المصري الجديد، وهذا الموضوع
System 2.0, and this was submitted in a meeting with the World Bank in 2016, and we discussed then the reconstruction of the Egyptian education. This was done by Finland and Singapore before, and the political leadership supported the idea, and we started implementing it since 2017. We started thinking how we would like the Egyptian child to look like in 2030 after receiving this education. If he would start in 2018, then he would be educated in 2030. So we identified the life skills we want him to acquire, and accordingly we designed the new curriculum and the new program to meet. We want a child with critical thinking, capable of analyzing, decision making, has a team spirit, can work in a team. These were all the skills on which we developed the framework and the blueprint of the curricula. We started from KG1, KG2, and then grade 1, and we applied them on the first generation that went to school in 2018. Everything here is new, the philosophy, the book, the assessment. And here in this project we are cooperating with the World Bank closely since day one. Yes, this was a question. Changing any system needs time. Partnerships with international organizations, how did it contribute to enhancing the implementation of this strategy? The period between 2014-2017, there was a big dialogue with the World Bank, UNICEF, UNESCO, WFP, UNDP, academic partners in the US, Finland, Singapore, and other countries from which we want to take the best they did. So, of course, as a result of this, a project we started in 2017 crystallized all that. For the life skills, for example, this was done in cooperation with UNICEF. So there are a lot of inputs. By the end of the day, we want an Egyptian curriculum that suits our community according to international standards in the meantime. And this is the product that we have right now. Today, we were putting the final things for the curricula of grade 4. So now there are generations that saw nothing except the new curriculum. If you would look at the new curriculum that would be introduced in 1 month, would be applying international standards. And here we are cooperating with the Ministry of Social Solidarity. The ministry is managing the nurseries and the daycare centers. For the new education, we decided to expand it to include child from the age of 2 years rather than 4. We starting 2 years from the age of the child, we start applying this curriculum. So there is KG1, KG2, they are all following the same system. Our hope is that this generation would graduate in 2030. This is a very big project. There are strategic decisions how we would develop the curricula from preparatory 1 up till secondary education. We are doing this so that we would be able to graduate a student who will be able to live for 15 years and compete in a community that we do not know how it would be like right now. This change with the life skills and the cultural change is even more important than education, books and marks. Why do we learn? Are we learning just to pass the exam or to acquire skills for us to live with? We are coming from the past when the parents used to ask about the grades and the scores rather than asking what he learned. So we want now the student to study because he wants to learn and not because he wants to pass the exam. We want to change all this. We want to teach them how to be educated because they will keep educated and will keep learning throughout their lives. And we want also the community to help us focus again on the process of learning rather than exams and evaluation. So we need or to consider, why do we send our children to schools? A lot of countries changed this. Excuse me. I would like to say that brave decisions were made because the biggest problem with employment in most of the Arab countries is that maybe the skills and the competences and the labor market, there's discrepancy between the skills and the competences and what the students learn and what is needed in the labor market. So it's so good that Egypt took this initiative. Yes, exactly. And this will make us say that, okay, we are developing the curriculum from kindergarten up to secondary, so we are not going to reap the fruits of all that except after a number of years. We try to help the other previous generations as much as we can. That's why we started with the change in the secondary education. We moved from measuring the retrieval competences to measuring something totally, whether the student is able to understand the information and apply it or not. This change will make them prepare in a different way. This was our objective. We provided them with sources, as a result of which we have a lot of electronic platforms that helped us during the pandemic, COVID-19, and we now have the equipments, the tabs in our schools now, even in the public schools. Each student and each pupil now has a tablet to access the information because we want them to acquire and develop other skills, the skills of analysis, application, and processing the information. This is not easy, but I would like to say that the generation and the batch that started in 2018 graduated this year. Of course, a lot of people talked about this, but the students performed well in the secondary education with this new system, and larger numbers of students are going to universities. We are focusing also on technical educational and vocational education as much, and we want the number of those who join vocational and technical education would be more. And within the coming few months, we will find a revolution in technical education. Once they join preparatory education, we'll give them a book called The Jobs of the Future, so that would get to know what are their preferences. We'll introduce to them 200 jobs that have nothing to do with the old jobs. These are new jobs that would serve the labor market. Thank you very much. Dr. Naveen, let us talk about fighting poverty, reducing poverty rates in Egypt. This is one of the priorities of the Egyptian government, and there were a number of initiatives like Takaful and Karama, Decent Life. Talk to us more about these initiatives and how they are contributing to reducing poverty in Egypt. I'm glad here to be among this galaxy of experts and officials to talk about international cooperation. I would like to thank Dr. Rania Al-Mashat for coordinating this meeting. I find direct relation between poverty reduction and investing in human resources or in the human capital, because I think that those who reduce poverty rates are human beings, the human capital. But to do so, they should be invested in. I think that investing in the human capital is directly linked to the right of every individual to access education, health care, rehabilitation for the labor market, decent life. The poverty reduction has to do with a number of components. It is related to inclusion. I cannot teach a student and then tell him you have no right to potable water, for example. So there are a number of development indicators in which you invest so that this would lead to real investment in human beings, and there would be a real relationship between investing in the human capital and economic empowerment and economic development. That's why Takaful and Karama program was introduced, and it is the umbrella of social safety networks because it's wider than providing financial aid, because it has to do with education and health indicators in addition to the prevention of early marriage. And as a result of that, after 6 years, we find that it contributed to poverty reduction. The planning of the program was based on the targeting theory. We give due attention to social expenses, and we focus on spending on the social gaps. As for automation also and digitization, that improve the efficiency of investment to invest in the human capital, because I think that it reduces the waste and the wasted resources that could have been invested in the human capital and provide alternative opportunities. We are dealing with the human capital from the perspective of life cycle. We start with the first 1,000 days of the life of the newly born baby, and then we link this to the indicators of education, health care, and then rehabilitation for the labor market until we receive health insurance as well as social insurance. This was clear on the poverty maps issued by CAPMAS, the Central Authority for Public Mobilization, that showed that the poverty rate decreased to 29.7% from 33%. Taking into consideration that this happened during the period of pandemic, and the ability of the Egyptian community to show resilience was related to social protection and the resilience. Takaful and Karama is a young program, 52% of which is directed to children and youth below the age of 24. And this shows that everything we spend are invested again in human beings. Also, the percentage of women beneficiaries is 75%. We are focusing on women through this program to provide them with reproductive health, health care, also family planning, to be able to invest more in the community, because we do not want to have this problem of overpopulation that eats up any growth rate or any development we achieve. That's why we are not working on our own in the Ministry of Social Solidarity. We are working with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Local Development, Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Housing, because they all provide decent life to Egyptians. And this is the program that was launched by the President, that creates the conducive environment for investment. for me to send my child to school. In the school, we should find a close school to our neighborhood. We should find the nursery. We should find the facilities, utilities, and all the services he would need. I will move on to General Mahmoud, the Minister of Local Development. The development of Upper Egypt is a project implemented by the ministry along with World Bank. Would you give us more information about the results achieved up till now through this cooperation with the World Bank through the project up till the umbrella of Decent Life Initiative? In the name of Allah, I'm so glad to be here with you today, and this is my second session on the same day, and I think that people are bored by now. No, on the contrary. We are talking about a point that we did not cover during the first part of the day, and it is this project for developing Upper Egypt. As my colleague, the minister said, the poverty rates through the studies of CAP mass enabled us to identify the needy governorates, and we find that we have two poorest governorates. They are Sohag and Qina governorates. That's why we focused on these two governorates. We started this project with the World Bank. We started together studying the poverty rate in both governorates, the services they lack, level of education, level of health care. We studied everything in all sectors. And the first thing we did, as Minister Tariq said, we started with education. We tried to find how can we make institutional change in the local authorities in both governorates. So we introduced a different institutional system, and we selected the participatory councils and the economic councils and then the Supreme Council. These councils are comprised of members from the Egyptian community, starting from the village, then the center up till the governorate and the city. So we selected projects from bottom up, and this is what we started implementing afterwards in these governorates and then the other governorates. After the success of this idea in these two governorates, Qina and Sohag, we started by identifying the needed projects, and we did feasibility studies for these projects. The project started in the beginning of 2018. Over 3 years, we implemented about 3,500 projects. The implementation rates in the sectors were very good. As an example, in some cities, we did not have wastewater and potable water in some villages. So now one of the outcomes of this project is that there is wastewater coverage 100% in cities, 65% coverage in villages. And there were other projects for education, health, roads. And then we worked on economic empowerment of the households and providing job opportunities. In addition to the economic zones we established in both governorates, by the end of the day, we were able to have 3 economic zones, and 4 billion Egyptian pounds were pumped as infrastructure in them. The operation rate now exceeds 27%, and we will start another phase. This project was selected this year as the best project by the United Nations for the Sustainable Development Goals implementation. This project achieves 12 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals for sustainable development and poverty reduction. So a lot of effort was exerted in this project, and this project has covered different sectors so that by the end of the day we are able to achieve this result. Thank God now The project will phase out by 2024, and we are still in 2021, and about 75% of the project was already implemented. And through the committees from the World Bank and the UN that visited and supervised the project, they emphasized what I've just said, and they even confirmed it from the financial perspective. So for these projects, the implementation rates are very high. We have a very important part in this project that is creating job opportunities and improving handicrafts. We are able to identify 25 economic clusters in these two governorates. We started with 4 clusters, and through the consultation firms, we started working on them. After the pandemic suspended these handicrafts, they were about to go extinct, but we were able to increase the number of craftsmen to be tenfolds of those who were working 2 years ago. Especially that for these handicrafts, these are rare handicrafts, and it's so difficult for us to make up for them. We provided also those craftsmen with the raw materials needed. So we worked by that on economic empowerment. We are able to make institutional change, economic empowerment. We are able to increase performance rates in all sectors. So I consider this to be a successful project with the World Bank, and we are following it up. And I personally follow up the project to see its achievements. Thank you very much. Let me move on now to Ms. Mamta from the World Bank. The ministers talked about a number of partnerships with the World Bank that launched the program of the human capital, where 29 countries are participating, and Egypt was one of the first countries that participated in it. What is the progress achieved in light of this program, and how Decent Life initiative is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations agenda?
So thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to join you remotely, and I apologize that it has to be a remote participation. Sorry, I can hear some echo. Would it be possible to mute that, because it's hard for me to speak?
أعتذر لا أستطيع الحديث لأني أسمع صدى صوت.
Sorry, I cannot talk because I can hear an echo and it makes it difficult for me to talk. I would just like to say that what was done by Egypt is very distinguished. See, it's one of the first countries that adopted this project, investing in human capital. I would like to congratulate all those who worked on this project. And I would like to mention 2 points about this project. This project is an attempt to check that the human capital and the human development is the first investment in number of contexts. The human capital happens through spending on healthcare, local development, and education, and we consider it to be, as Dr. Tariq said, a treasure and not just investment. No country was able to achieve sustainable development without investing in people. So through this project, we are trying to highlight the importance of investing in human capital as in investment in the future of the country. This project for investing in human capital is trying to emphasize the importance of data, and that there is good, clear understanding of the expected outputs of these expenditures. Thus, we can sustain it. So the human capital indicator is part of the database and the measuring agenda. And this is a measurement that was developed by the World Bank, through which we were able to evaluate Egypt as it is 0.94. So if a girl was born in Egypt recently and she received services,